Hey guys, Mr. A here, and today we're going to talk about a brief overview of the coordinate system and how it works. So first let's talk about the coordinate plane. That is, this little thingy right here. This right here is what we would call the coordinate plane. All it is a two-dimensional plane. It's a grid where we can plot points and lines based on their x and y coordinates. Well, what is an x, and y? Well, before I get into that, let's talk about the axes, or the axes. The x-axis is the horizontal number line. Negative numbers are to the left, and positive numbers are to the right. The horizontal number line. It's the x-axis. Okay? Let's talk about the y-axis next. The y-axis, well, I'm assuming you can figure out that if the x-axis is the horizontal number line, that only leaves one other axis, and that is your vertical number line. The negative numbers tend to be below, and the positive numbers are above, as with any old thermometer. So, how do we write and read coordinates? Coordinates will typically be written as parentheses, x, y, close parentheses. The first number, your x, is going to be telling you how far left or right you have to go. Your second number, your y, is going to be telling you how far up or down to go. You can remember this as you have to run before you jump. Things don't work. You know what? Let me show you a quick example. Alright, this seems as good a place as any to test out what I was trying to tell you about the x and y axis. So, if you see, I've got to start a running start before I can really jump anywhere. It doesn't make much sense for me to just jump and then move over to a place, because I'm not going to stay there. Same problem with falling. If I were to fall from the top of this cliff and wanted to stop about halfway down and then start running across, it's not going to work. Things don't work like they do in this game, where I can simply shoot all the way up without having to move. It's especially true when dealing with negative numbers, such as a coordinate like maybe 5 and negative 10. It's not going to make much sense for me to drop 10 first and then move over 5. It's just not going to make sense. I'm going to have to move over 5 spaces before I can drop 10 spaces. Alright? I'm not going to be able to, 100% of the time, simply drop 5 and then start moving over. That's not how things work. I can walk right up to this block and start trying to jump first and then run. I can keep trying that, but I'm going to get old and gray before I'm done getting up to this one brick. I'm going to have to first start running and then jump. Okay? Let's head back to an example. So the example I've prepared is from an awesome website that I like to pull some examples from, called mathaids.com. I'll leave a link later on. So, it says down here to connect each sequence of points with a line. Well, what in the world does it mean, connecting points with lines and sequences? Let's start slow. The first coordinate we can see says -9, 3. So what we're going to do is follow our x coordinate. It even labeled our x and y axes for us. We're going to start at this point right here, which we would call our origin. Origin just means that is where the location of the 0 coordinate is. We're going to start at 0, and we're going to first go to -9. If you remember from earlier, we have to first run and then jump. So we're going to run all the way over to -9, and then we're going to jump to positive 3. 1, 2, 3. And we'll put a little dot right there. Once we've got that dot there, we need to figure out where the next point is going to be. Negative 7, 5. Alright, we'll run to negative 7 and jump to positive 5 and put our point there. Well, it said up here, connect each sequence of dots with a line. What it wants us to do is it wants us to take a line and draw between the 2 points that we have so far. And that's all we're going to be doing for every single sequence of points. Next up, negative 4, 6. Negative 4, positive 6. Plot our point, connect from there. 0, 9. This one's a bit tricky and sort of goes directly against the example that I brought up earlier of running and jumping. It says 0, 9. What it wants us to do in this case is actually not run. Because our first or x coordinate is 0, we are going to stay at our origin point when we jump to positive 9, all the way up here. And then, same as before, we simply connect that point with our other previous point. From there, we move on to 1, 5, positive 1, positive 5. Connect that point here, and move on to the next, which is 5, 4. Over 5, up 4. Now, of course, if you were doing this yourself, you would likely be using dots or check marks or X's or crossing these numbers out as you go. Me personally, I prefer simply putting a dot or some sort of mark above or next to the numbers as we go. This helps you to make sure that you're not losing track of which point has to be done next, as well as also just kind of acting as a little personal check mark to make sure that you're making good progress. Now, I'm assuming at this point you have a pretty decent understanding of this. Hence the reason I'm not reading out every point that I'm doing. All I want you to do right now is try to keep a mental track of where each point is going to go next. For example, as I was drawing that line, I hoped that you would have found negative 1, negative 1, which would be right here. As I'm plotting this line right here, I hope you're already on the lookout for the next line, which is negative 5, negative 1. Located right here. Now, we're at the end of the sequence, and the final point is actually the point that we started with, negative 9 and positive 3. And then it says end of sequence. What it means by end of sequence is that these are the only points that are going to be connected. From this point on, this sequence may or may not be connected to any of these other points. So let's just keep going to negative 5 and 2. Negative 5, 2. Next to 2, 2. Then to negative 2, 1. And finally back to our original negative 5 and positive 2 point. I'll go ahead and connect those lines for us. End of this sequence. Now this one I want you to pay extra close attention to because it deals with decimals. The first point is going to be negative 6, positive 4, an ordinary point. Afterwards, the next point is going to be negative 6 and 4.5. Alright, so follow along with my mouse. We start at our origin, go to negative 6 as we normally would, go up to 4 as we normally would, and when it says 4.5, it wants us to go halfway to the next number. So, halfway between 4 and 5 would be right here at 4.5 or 4.5. Next, it's going to say negative 5.5 and 4.5. That's actually going to be a little tricky. Well, for this point, you start at your origin, go all the way over to negative 5, and then, much like with 4.5, you're going to go halfway to the next number. In this case, right around here, in between the negative 5 and negative 6. Your second number, 4.5, is one that we've just seen and finished talking about. So we're going to go up to 4 and halfway to the next number. So our negative 5.5 and positive 4.5 is going to end up right about there. We'll connect that line and finish up with negative 5.5 and 4. Negative 5.5 and 4. And I don't think you even really need this sequence of coordinates in order to tell you that your final coordinate belongs right there. The final sequence starts at negative 9 and 3 and ends at negative 6 and 3. We'll draw our dot, connect it, and we got a nice neat little answer as a little fish. Everybody got that? Alright. For more examples, feel free to visit this website I told you about. It's mathaids.com. They've got a whole bunch of really neat practice items in there, and it is all randomly generated and is for the most part different every time you generate a new worksheet or graphing picture. Alright guys, I really hope you found all of this information useful, and as always, I'm Mr. A. Have a nice night.